I really was like bottom of the barrel, £16 in the bank account on release day.
Jordan Grant Hall went all in to follow his dream of making indie games.
Publishing a game for your first time is terrifying, and I soft locked the beginning of the game. The reviews were coming in as negative, and everything was just hitting the fan.
Despite a rocky launch, that game has grossed over $200,000 to date.
It is essentially an incremental game that is about cultists, ducks, and an orb.
And now he's ready to tell all, to share with us the wisdom he's learned on this journey.
Do not show your games to your friends you've grown up with. They are useless. The best performing ads were on Facebook. NextFest mentally buggered me.
How did you decide to not get held up in those projects, but then All the Hail the Orb did stick?
Validation. It wasn't until January, 22nd.
All Hail the Orb just sold, has now sold 37,000 copies and grossed over $200,000. And this is your first commercial Steam release, which is pretty impressive. So for the audience that hasn't seen it, can you just give me kind of the elevator pitch of the game? What is All Hail the Orb?
It is essentially a incremental game that is about cultists, ducks, and an orb. Definitely inspired by Wizard Tower, and definitely inspired by, oddly enough, Eidolon for mechanics and the way it's driven. It's specifically designed to just be chill and something that people can enjoy playing rather than having to think too hard.
Yeah, and this is your first commercial game, but I know that you do have some history in the industry, so can you just give people a little context of like where you're coming from in game development and how you ended up getting here to being a solo developer?
So it's a little bit long, so I'll try and paraphrase it, but essentially I've been doing game development in Unity solely for 11 years. I graduated uni in 2018 after having changed my course twice and still coming out with a first. And then I went and did freelancing. I did that for 3 years, then lost my entire platform that I was on because I was on Fiverr due to gross negligence on my part. Then I opened up a company with 2 other people, which I left in January last year. Then fortunately enough, I had clients from the previous years I was working on stuff. And that pulled me over till about December time. And then I'd started working on All Hail the Orb back in October for like an hour or two, like every other day. It was like maybe like 8 to 10 hours max a week for like 3 months. And then...
Sorry about that. Let me mute that before we go. That really distracted me.
That's absolutely fine. And then I took a gamble on myself. So All Hail the Orb popped onto Steam in January, and I took a £6,000 pity loan from my grandparents for 10% of my game's revenue, for my net revenue, and then had to delay the game by a month and then again by 4 days to coexist the same day as 3 other incremental games I bundled with. My journey from where I am obviously breaking this down into like the smallest steps, is a very long but very interesting journey, and I could speak hours about it. But yeah. It's been a long one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe we'll have that side chat of just diving into your journey some other day. But I do want to talk about just All Hail the Orb, and also part of the reason that it's so exciting and also kind of impressive that you have hit 200K is that this was a pretty short project. It was like a 4-month development cycle. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. I'd probably say between October and December, you're looking at 10 hours a week. So it's probably about 3 weeks of work between October and December, and then from January I went full time. January, February, March, and then like half of April. So yeah, it's about 4.5 months total development time.
Okay, excellent. And I do want to jump into like some of the game design of it and stuff, but just keeping in this sort of like warm up, kind of teasing a little bit of the journey. I know also that launch week was maybe a little bit stressful. You did three hot fixes. So can you tell me a little bit about just like, you hit publish and then what happened? Like what was going on after that?
publishing a game for your first time is terrifying. Going to sleep and doing what I did was infinitely worse, and my whole team agreed with it. I have a team, but I'm the only developer on it. Um, I I released three major hot fixes and actually probably about seven hot fixes in total because I also did some silent ones that were like very minor, like get this out the door sort of thing. But the very first hot fix update we did was about 2, 3 days after release. If you look at the if you look at the special announcements for the game, you'll realize we apologize a lot because I went to sleep right after I released an update without fully
Oof.
checking it, and I
Yeah.
soft locked the beginning of the game for about 7 hours in my launch week. That was my team are American and Australian. The other two people I work with are those ends. So I went to sleep, and you had these two shifting along the timeline, panicking whilst I'm sleeping, trying
Oh
to
my
learn.
gosh.
I'm so grateful that the one in Australia, Maxi, who did all the marketing for the game, has access to Steam because she rolled it back probably about like 4 or 5 hours later once she realized the reviews were coming in as negative and everything was just hitting the fan. Yeah, don't go to sleep after an update. I've been banned from updating and going to bed at least for 3 to 4 hours.
Wow, that is insane. What was the actual nature of the soft lock? What did you do?
I honestly don't really remember. I just remember that you couldn't get past the. Oh, it was the obelisk. It was the obelisk at the beginning of the game. I was refactoring the way that it takes in resources, and it was literally just like a single button click that could have been done to fix it. And yeah, I completely missed it. I have like save states in the game that allow me to check certain bits during the game. So I just assumed the intro was untouched and unproblematic. Nope, nope. I end up screwing myself over quite a bit by that. Um, yeah, it was pain. It was pure pain and suffering. The first 10 days of after release was like 16-hour days. It was horrible. And it
Wow.
wasn't until those 10 days had ended where I went on holiday and just went, you know what? It's in the best state I can get it right now, and I'm mentally dead. I'm going on holiday.
Yeah, that's valid. Do you have any sense of like, do you think that impacted your long-term numbers at all? Because now you've bumped it up. It's sitting at, I think when I checked, 94% positivity. Like it's a really well-received game. Do you feel like those early struggles affected it? Did people go back and update their reviews when they saw that you were being active in there? What's your sense?
We actually, on that note, we had a lot of people change their reviews from negative to positive. We were incredibly active in the community. We responded to every negative review had a custom message addressing the problem. We went through the community page, we checked through all of them, and people could see that we were active in the community. The thing is, if you look at the early reviews, a lot of them was, I really enjoyed this game, but this. And it's like, right. So I could have had a lot more negative, but I feel like the game's charm did a lot of the heavy lifting. It did a
Yeah.
lot of the heavy lifting for that.
Yeah, it is quite a silly game. Before we jump into some of the specifics, also one other thing you touched on that I think would be helpful context is just, yeah, that you're working on a team. Can you just give us the quick team breakdown of who's doing what?
So there's me, the developer and the project lead. There is Maxi, who deals with all of the marketing, everything from emailing to documentation to dealing with like contractors who do stuff for the project. She's essentially my everything outside the engine person. Very useful to have. We've coined the phrase, you need a Maxi. That's essentially us saying you need someone that does all this because it's horrible without, and she knows it. And then there's Crump, who I brought onto the project probably around February more full time, and he was unpaid for months, and then obviously I paid him once the game did well. There was an agreement in place; it wasn't just extortion, I promise. But yeah, it's just three of us, and now we'll get into the next step later on. But we're now a team of five, and technically, actually, there was one more person, Arrow, and he did the trailer for the game.
Okay, super cool. Yeah, I just think it's nice to have the context of who's building stuff when we're talking about these games. So, okay, let's. I would love to dive into a sort of game design discussion here, and first, just get your thoughts on the incremental space as a whole. I think we're in an interesting time where there's this sort of like kind of boom of the idea of incremental games being very successful right now. A lot of people are jumping on that train. So just overall, do you feel like the space is getting crowded? Is it the best time ever to make an incremental game? What's your sense there?
I think the best time to make an incremental was last year. However, I don't think it's unprofitable. A game called Slots and Diapers just came out, and they're pulling the same numbers I did in launch week. And that's, 2 months after I released my game in a pretty now crowded genre. The only thing is, the in the same way that we had Vampire Survivors, the moment that game came out, loads of copycats happened, but then you'll realize that the amount of money they made slowly decreased. However, the quality bar also was going further and further down. That's the same thing I feel we're happening with incrementals is since Chris decided to make a video saying these are like the best things to make, everyone is jumping on it. But the problem is it's not quantity that's the problem, it's the quality. The lack of actual good game design and actually interesting mechanics, I feel, is where the problem is. I don't think incrementals are dead or incrementals are less profitable. I think the bar for entry is getting higher, which it should
Hmm.
be, because nobody wants to play the 10,001 node buster. Like, no one wants to play that.
Yeah, Chris might just have too much power. I mean, someone else has got to get in there and compete with him on the marketing beats. I mean, no, Chris is the best, but that is quite funny that if he says something, it carries so much weight.
Yeah.
So what were some of the things you did? All Hail the Orb, like it is one of the like silliest games I've seen of just like the premise. Like you've got these ducks in
Yeah.
there. So tell me about like was that sort of zany fantasy part of how you decided to set yourself apart?
No. So I started prototyping because I saw started prototyping, like the concept of cultists and ducks did not happen at the same time. I started prototyping with just cultist assets and just being able to spawn them in because I really liked a particular artist's 2D pack of cultists. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try and do something with this. And it wasn't until like December time where one of my developer friends was like, hey, I'm making this 3D game and I want to stick a PNG of a duck in it. Would you like to add a duck to yours? I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And then I added a duck and I was like, I like this duck. I'm gonna give it some words, and I made it say like, "Stop touching me with your filthy hands." I was like, people were really enjoying the duck when I started getting given out to people. I'm just gonna full send it. There's no remorse, and my entire game in terms of like the zany aesthetic was just me trying to make my day to day go by. It was just me making myself laugh. You open up a chest and you've got cultists blowing trumpets and playing the piano. It was all designed just to make me laugh. And if I enjoyed it, there was a pretty high bar chance that other people would too.
Yeah,
So
it's incredibly fun in the silliest way. Do you have a favorite duck?
I do. It's a legendary duck. So the ducks are all designed. I say about eight of them are designed by the artist, and funnily enough, the other 20 or the other 18 or 16 are designed by streamers, fellow streamers of mine, because I Twitch stream.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, so one of my favorite ones is by a streamer called Firebelly, and he designed the cultist duck, which I've named Morty. But he's got a very unique art style that I'm very, very fond of. It's very gothic, uh, like old school gothic style with like harsh greens and purples and reds, which just really look good together. But yeah, that's my favorite duck of all of them.
Yeah, that's crazy. Firebelly, I just interviewed him and his episode came out today that we're chatting. So that's
Yeah,
that's awesome.
so
What a fun little
his duck.
blend. That's awesome. So fun. Well, and then you found a way to integrate the ducks into the gameplay as well. How do they actually interact with the game?
They didn't originally that much. They were all just passive. But as playtesters in January and February started like really getting into it, I started noticing that people were like, "Do the ducks do anything? Huh? Do the ducks do anything?" It's like, no, they should. It's like, all right then. So I essentially just took. I played through when I was deciding what I wanted ducks to do. I played through the entirety of Wizard Tower as my inspiration, and that gave me like a pretty solid idea regarding functionality. The ducks are very much based on a prestige system. I originally was going to have a giant skill tree shit in the shape of an orb, but that just wouldn't work. And so I end up going, I still want a skill tree, but I think I'm going to just reserve it for the ducks. And it was very small, and it doesn't. There's no prestige in my game, none of that element. I wanted a game that didn't feel like a no buster, so there wasn't going to be all a round by round thing, which is the current meta, which is dying off very quickly currently. And I just wanted to feel more like Wizard Tower. I wanted to feel more like Shell Diver, games that have more of an intrinsic gameplay loop to them. And Ducks fit very, very well as a passive gain. As someone who's got like 16,000 hours on Eidolon, anything that is like a passive side system is my bread and butter. Absolutely love them.
Yeah, interesting choice not to do a prestige system. Now I know about Tower Wizard, but I haven't actually played it. Does that game have a prestige system?
It does. It has a prestige system in the way that you accumulate resources, and as you accumulate those resources, you gain like points in the background that you don't actually see the numbers of. Oh, no, I guess you do. Yeah, it's like a total accumulation to the next prestige point, and that is you click that and then you restart the bottom of the tower, and then you do it again but faster, and that sort of prestige system. I didn't want a prestige in mine mainly because I didn't think it needed it. It would have like I didn't want to overbloat, and this is something you'll find a lot in the reviews is that people are very mindful that I didn't overstay my welcome with the game. I could have made it last, 8 to 10 hours, but I I didn't balance my game based on prestiging and all the maths related to it. It was like I played through it and I went, okay, how much time does it take for me to personally get to this bit? Great, it takes me 20 minutes. For the average player, I'm going to add on half of that time on top. That's roughly how long I think it will take for the average person. That's how I'm going to do it. If I didn't by the time I get bored of a system, that's my cutoff point to move on to the next thing. And that's why I didn't add prestiging because I just didn't want it. Didn't want the bloat. It Unless you can find an actual good reason to prestige, there's no point in doing so.
Yeah, I love that take, especially the sort of like vibes based balancing, so to speak. I know that Payne Robinson did something similar with Execute. He just played the game a whole bunch, which is a nice
Yep.
way as compared to the sort of like dopamine maxing algorithmic. Not that there's anything wrong with those games,
No.
but I do appreciate the vibes based balancing. You mentioned also that it's pretty small. What's about how long does it take to beat the game for the average player?
Average player, our average median time is 4 hours and 20 minutes.
Okay. Very nice. And then just sticking on this theme of small, I know there's also in the sort of marketing meta, I've already dropped Chris Z. He says that it's the sort of golden age of time to make games because you can make a small game that has success. So can you take me into your plan whenever you hit January, you go full time on this
Ooh.
game? Did you plan for it to be a certain amount of months game or did you sort of stumble into it? What was that? What did that look like?
100% a stumble into it. When I took the loan from my grandparents, I said I'm going to survive on this for 3 months. It will also pay for my artist for like just to get him started. So the timeline was I was meant to originally release March 16th, and then I realized I could not get it done by March 16th in a way that would make me happy. I didn't care about the players at this point. It was purely just, am I happy with what I've made? And I wasn't happy. So I prolonged it by a month. And in that time, I had the opportunity to get more more communicative with fellow people in the incremental space. And then I delayed it an extra 4 days to the 20th of April, specifically to launch with MMO98, Chipmatic, and Fracture Fields. So the marketing beats, we did so much research at the beginning, but everyone gives you different advice. Some like the most common thing was just email people. It's like, great. That doesn't actually do much. We didn't get many videos, and the biggest influence we had was Idle Cub making a video. But we hadn't even emailed him yet. He had picked up the alpha like 3 weeks before before we were going to send out the video. So the version he played was nothing like the demo that was coming out onto Next Fest like 2 weeks later. But it still pushed wish lists. Yeah, we didn't have an idea in terms of time frame whatsoever.
Yeah, so whenever you were in that sort of crunch and you had this feeling that it's not the state that I want it to be, was it just what was lacking? What were you looking for in that time that you needed to get it to?
There were two factors that went into that. The first one was how long does it take for me to finish the game? And two, are there enough features so that technically you have essentially one new thing every half an hour up until like originally the game was only going to be like 2 hours long. And then in the last month, we crammed in like 7 extra features. By we, I mean me. I crammed in a ludicrous amount of hours to get a whole bunch of features in to get it up to about 3.5 hours. And so, yeah, it's primarily just I wasn't I wasn't happy with round. This is a hard one because Next Fest mentally buggered me. I I got the game to 4,000 wish lists with the help of Maxi via just email marketing and getting videos made. And there's only a few big ones that got made. So we entered Next Fest with 4,000, and obviously people were like, you're going to do like really good numbers in Next Fest. You got like 4,000, 3,000, whatever. We got 1,000 wish lists, which in comparison to most games, it was good. In comparison to the people that were making similar games, we absolutely died. It was not
Interesting.
good. And so that mentally wrecked me for 2 weeks. I was very antisocial during that period and very down in the slumps. Um, but no, the overall process for it was just getting something done. I just Next Fest was interesting and a harsh lesson to learn. That's pretty much my main takeaway from that.
Yeah, now that you've been there with Next Fest and this kind of disappointing experience, what's your take now, like to someone listening, maybe they're going to do their Next Fest. Like, are you just kind of like, fuck it, have no expectations? Or like when you're going to do it again, what kind of mindset are you going to try to have if you're planning to make another game, which I'm assuming you are?
Oh, we're already midway through another one. I say midway. We're 20 days into a 10-month project. I'm going
Awesome.
all hands in. But my main takeaway and probably advice I give to anyone joining Next Fest is have a Steam page up for a long time prior. This is the same thing that Chris preaches. I've realized that it does hold weight. You do get freak things like MMO98 getting 6,500 wish lists from practically his Steam page being live for like 2 days before Next Fest. But validate your idea first before you chuck it onto Next Fest as well. We threw it on Incremental DB and Galaxy.click, which are two incremental, very, very incremental specific websites. Great for validating an idea. And even if you have wish lists, be prepared to get a very small amount of wish lists by comparison. It is a multiplier of some kind, but it's not accurate in the slightest. I got 25% on top, and MMO98 got like 900% on top. You can't Loopler, which is another crazy one. that got like 20,000 or something stupid wish lists
Wow.
in Next Fest, and it was, it looked great, it played great. I had the opportunity to talk to the developer in the incremental group, but it's just madness. And then the one that really kicked me in the teeth was a developer called Vari, who's doing an incremental that's also a platformer, IG Tap, which is all over YouTube. Funnily enough, during Next Fest, and during Next Fest, he got 20,000 wish lists, and he wasn't even in Next Fest. This is just from getting caught up by Blitz. It's those things that just make you go, "Fuck." It's easy. It's easy to fall into slumps with Next Fest. You have high expectations from everything that everyone's saying around you, but realistically, you can't plan for it. You can do the best you can to give yourself the best position, but don't promise yourself anything. Don't give yourself high expectations. You have no control.
Yeah, what do you attribute All Hail the Orb's sort of lower performance compared to these other incrementals to? Is it just the marketing going in and the wishlist numbers, or the demo? Why do you think it struggled?
I actually don't know. This is something me and the team have spoken quite a lot about. We aren't like we put it onto incremental DB, and we got like 130 to like 30, 130 up to like 30 down. We put on Galaxy.click and everyone was really happy with it. It was like over 1,000 or 2,000 players at like a 4.2 or 4.3. We had validation that the game was good, but when it came to Next Fest and it came to like trying to get YouTubers to play the game, nobody would touch it. And
Hmm.
we had no idea why. Because every single other piece of information out there would make you think that they would. All the validation would show that they would, but it wasn't. And I wonder if it's because it was like Wizard Tower. Because I heard from Wizard Tower that I'm pretty sure they also didn't get like a huge amount of wish lists or anything prior as well. And they, same with Norp's Apolog. I'm pretty sure that one also released with a very few amount because the general populace want games that are easy to understand without complicated systems. Wizard Tower, Norp's Apolog, and now All Hell the Orb all fit into a category of multiple subsystems all connecting in with one another, and it drives people away. It's not, I click this, I harvest rock, I get resources, I upgrade, I repeat, which is what a node buster like is. And it's just, we had no idea. The only semblance of information we got was me talking to the execute dev, and he personally messaged Orbital Potato about my game. Orbital never ended up making a video, but he just said, I'm burned out from doing incremental games. And he sent a screenshot to Execute, which was then sent to me. And his inbox from one day had like 25 game emails. I'm not surprised.
Hmm.
I'm not surprised that our game didn't get covered because there's just so much rubbish. So many games of low quality just being thrown to see what sticks, and it really overshadows any game that's been put in with love and actual game design. And I sound bitter, I am a little bit bitter from my past, but it is something which we just don't know. We had no idea.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And all of those games you mentioned, Tower Wizard, or I missed the second one you said, but also All Hail the Orb. I mean, despite maybe having a harder time with content creators, those games have had a lot of success and a nice long tail. So it's not a
Yeah,
question of the audience, but it is maybe in a weird pocket in this sort of indie marketing meta where, like the main advice is like focus on content creators and that will sell. But there's almost this weird category where that doesn't quite work. So it's just interesting. I'm just observing. Um,
the second game was Norp's Apolog, and I
Norp's
don't know
Apolog.
if it was this game, but I'm pretty sure that game released with like 500 wish lists or something, and he had no idea if it was going to do well at all, and then it just blew up.
Fascinating. Yeah. Okay. Well, that is something to ponder about. Maybe people can hit us in the comments if they've found any insight. Um, Okay, we have sort of jumped into marketing, which is something I wanted to ask you about. So let's go kind of into this. You've already sort of uh alluded to this, but I know you had 13,700 wish list before launch. So how did you get to that number beforehand if you were missing out on these content creators?
So, January 2nd, we opened the Steam page with no trailer. Great start. We got probably like 300 wish lists in the first like 2 weeks. It was very slow. Um, and then around about the 24th, 25th uh, of January, I released the game or released a page of the game and like a really, really low alpha level game of it onto Incremental DB. This pushed our wish lists up to like 700 with the accompaniment of like a Reddit post that coexisted around the same time I did that. So then Idle Cub made a video out of nowhere. I think it was like February February like 2nd or somewhere around there. That pushed us to like 2,000 odd wish lists in like a couple days. That was like the big major early boom we had. Then we put it on Galaxy.click shortly after. And then we had a couple YouTubers that we contacted out to that are covered. Maybe they got like 10 to 15,000 views each, but this was enough to push us. There was enough interest in the game that we had a really good conversion rate that took us from 2,500 to 4,000 by Next Fest on the 20th. Next Fest pushed us from 4,000 to 5,000. Then the following month and a half, we only got a whopping 500 reviews through natural growth and no YouTube videos, absolutely none. So it was at that point where we were like 3 weeks away from release, and we had a publisher contact us, and the publisher just went, I really like your game. I see the vision. I'm going to offer you a really good contract. And it was. And I'm sure you're going to want to ask more about this. But he ran ads to get us. He gave me $12,000 of free money for ads without having to recoup it. It was a golden goose contract, as I like to call them. Absolutely perfect for the developer. So he didn't want to recoup the money, and he got the wish list up to like 9,500, like 4 days before release. And then because of that, we got into popular upcoming, and that pushed us to the 13,700 we had on release day.
Okay, so your decision to make a publisher was really just marketing related, like you were already just about to wrap up, or were there any other perks that you wanted to go with the publisher for?
We weren't planning on doing localization until after release, but my publisher said that a mandatory thing was to do publishing, to do localization. So he said he'd help with that. The ad spend was good. Also, he has like 130 games in his Steam like profile. That was one of the major ones, is being able to bundle up with as many of them as possible. I definitely went for the bundle strat. I think I released with like 47 bundles for release. So that ended up being very good. But
Yeah,
I
so
think
you're
that
sorry, go
you
ahead.
go. So yeah, the only real benefits that I went for was marketing, bundling, and just someone to assist with driving a few of the decisions towards like the marketing side. They were like the three major pillars that I went for, because we had no idea what we're doing. We're self-publishing our next game. We've learned a lot from the publisher we have had.
Yeah, so you're pro this sort of like maximizing bundles and like going hard on that. Do you feel like after seeing the numbers you would stick with that strategy again?
Yeah, I, I
Okay.
I think so. I think once you've got enough games under your belt and enough, like Kin and Quarry, for instance, the developer behind that, he's not doing bundles with people anymore. He's solely going to be bundling with himself, because he's had like 3 or 4 out of his 6 games do successful now that he can just bundle with himself. You know, he doesn't want to share the profits with anyone else. He wants to share it with himself, which is fair. I
Yeah.
think once we get to a certain point, I'd probably do the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and then another piece of marketing and especially Next Fest that I know is super important is having a solid demo. So, can you tell me about what you were thinking about with your demo and yeah, just what kind of demo did you have? What are some thoughts you have there?
Everything before the demo, like where the demo ends, was literally the only content I had in the game.
So it was the game.
It was
Incredible.
the last 2 months of development. I got 7 rooms done, 5 major pieces of functionality done, and all the rest of the core systems and the ducks and all of their functionality done within that 2 month span. The game that I had for the demo wasn't restricted for no reason. I just didn't have any content past
Amazing.
that point, which I've told a lot of people, and a lot of people just went, "You're a very ballsy person for doing that. That's a very risky strategy to go for because that's the last. You only get one next fest. You know what if you don't get enough done by the next one?" And so yeah, I pulled my weight, if that makes the most amount of sense of saying it. I really, really was like bottom of the barrel, £16 in the bank account on release day. It was do or die with no alternatives to not be successful in some capacity. I willed it
Yeah,
into existence.
yeah, I mean, sometimes that pressure makes diamonds, as they say, and it sounds like that was your case. Like, yeah, 16 pounds in the bank account is just a remarkable story. I mean, it's just incredible. So with the demo, which was just your content, did you do any kind of like scaling to try to make it a certain length, or it was literally just like, here's what I've got and just play what I've got?
It was literally, for me, it took half an hour to finish. For the average person, it took 40 minutes, which was more accurate. The thing is, and I'll send this over to you for you to display over on top. The statistics I have for my game in terms of like playtime is crazy good. My demo, I think it's like 93% of players played it over like the half an hour mark, which is like
Wow.
perfect on how long the game was. Most people who played it like
Yeah.
fully through. On the main game, it's like 97% at 10 minutes, 92% at 30 minutes. I think it's
Wow.
like 90% or 89% at an hour. You know, it's crazy good numbers for retention. So, refund rate's only 4.5%. It's been very, very good in terms of keeping that retention because it's interesting. It's interesting and it's not a boring game by design. That was
Yeah.
my whole aim.
Yeah, take me into the first 10 minutes of the game. What is so captivating? And were there any intentional decisions in there that you made to kind of keep people engaged?
So I don't know who I heard this from, but it was about the methodology of designing games, and is one that I live and die by, which is make the first quarter of your game the most interesting part of the entire experience. Make your ending of the game your second most interesting part, and make your middle the least interesting part. Most people psychologically are willing to sit through a game that they've committed enough time into being interesting, even if it's slightly below the bar from what the intro included, and you want to make sure that the ending is at least good enough so that they feel like the push through the midsection was worth it. So a lot of the decision making for the first 10 minutes was how do I make the experience of the player the most interesting? I added an intro dialogue. I added like wavy music sounds when you go into the intro sequence. There's an achievement on the main menu. All the UI looks great. The opening of rooms, there's animation, there's tile flipping effects. There's all sorts of goodies for people to be interested and be charmed by. And it wasn't until like the mid part of the game where I kind of just went, okay, the intro is good. The first quarter to first third of the game is like really solid, really grounded. And I can kind of calm down. Obviously, you have to remember, I got like 2.5 hours to 3 hours worth of content done in 2 months. I wasn't going to have the time, and it's not fully polished. I could polish the game like an extra ridiculous amount, but I don't really need to. I need to continue fixing bugs and stuff. But that first 10 minutes really is the hook. It absolutely did its job.
Yeah, okay. This is the first time I've heard this sort of framework of breaking the game into quarters, but I really like that. It's easy to understand, and also just yeah, on just a vibe check, it's like yeah, that makes sense. I as a gamer,
Yeah,
I'm sure I do that. Like when a game is really good at the start, you can handle some mediocre in the middle. So yeah, I really like that. Um, Also still kind of jumping back to marketing a little bit. I know that was maybe
go
a little
for it.
more game
Yeah, go
designy,
for it.
but you also mentioned that you did some posting on Reddit. Do you think that was worth your time?
No,
Yeah,
no.
not very good.
I
Yeah.
you'll be interested to know, and I know the viewers would, for ads. Like this is obviously not personal Reddit posts of my own, but ads actually perform terribly for me on Reddit. The best performing ads were on Facebook.
Wow, that's crazy. This is the second conversation I've had this week that has dropped Facebook as like a decent marketing tool. That's
It's
kind of wild.
really weird. It's really,
Yeah.
really weird. However, I will say that unless your game is like really top tier, none of those wish lists converted, but they did their job.
Mm,
The
interesting.
whole job of the ads wasn't to get people that will convert, it's to get wish lists to hit popular upcoming. It was strategic, 100% designed to get me into the popular upcoming so we could do the rest of the heavy lifting. It's also the reason why I wanted to make sure that I released on a Monday, so I had the whole weekend in popular upcoming.
Yeah, this exact strat might be why Steam blew up the popular and upcoming. So it'll be interesting to see where we all land with that. I know there's no data. Any vibe checks on those just because that's kind of the hot topic
Mm.
right now.
Is a huge hot topic at the moment. I can't go any Reddit post or any like basic Reddit scroll without someone discussing the fact
Yeah.
that Steam's completely just killed it for an indie devs. Supposedly, we're going to see how that pans over the next few months. I've got an incremental group with over 100 people that are releasing games in the next like month or so. I will have statistics to talk about, to ask about for mine. My next game's not coming out for like 10 months. It's not a concern of mine. Steam might roll it back or they might change something else again. It's like, that's not my problem right now.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. It's definitely a shift in the meta. I'm more of an optimist, so I'm not going to panic just yet. But we'll see. It's certainly a change. There's definitely a patch, so to speak, in the meta,
Yeah.
and people will have to shift. So, um, other than that change, now that you've been through this, any things that you're going to do differently for marketing for your next game that you're sure of that you'll do differently?
Honestly, I don't think I'm pretty sure we hit every single marketing beat that we could have. Like I guess if I had to put one up there, my the one that I wanted to take the most inspiration from was the YouTuber, the one behind Tiny Terraces, and he makes a short every like 2 or 3 days, and got loads of wish lists from just consistently hitting that mark every few days and making a good YouTube short that's just like, I did this today. This is why you should be interested. This is how cool it looks. Wouldn't you like to do this? Wish list now on Steam. It's like, yeah, that caught my attention. I ended up binge watching all of them. I haven't bought the game, I haven't wishlisted the game, but it grabbed my attention enough, and I guarantee, some of his videos have hit ridiculous numbers that otherwise wouldn't. Having more of a social media outlook on things is important as well. Specifically like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, which I've heard TikTok's the goat for it, but also getting millions of views doesn't convert, whereas like a million views on YouTube or a million views on Instagram. So it's more consistency than anything else, which I don't have. I have a family and a child. I don't have the time to do 8 hours of dev work every day, then look after a daughter, then find time to do 2 hours of editing for a short. It just doesn't exist in my time schedule. It's something I'd put off onto Maxi or Arrow to do. Like Arrow has 5% of the next game to do all the YouTube shorts and everything, so I don't have to. I've thought about
Yeah,
these things.
Yeah, I've got a really interesting interview that will come out right before yours with a developer who just purely was short form content and really hadn't made much of a game. They did like much more of like just making animations and sort of pitching the game, and they got 60K wish list in 6 weeks. And so they were really proposing that that's like the next viable strategy. So we'll see. That was actually
Was
where the
was that
Facebook
guy on
piece
Reddit?
came up.
Was that guy from Reddit by chance? Because I swear I read a post sounding very similar to that.
He probably has shared on Reddit. His game's Uncanny Valley.
Yeah, nope,
I don't
nope.
know his. Yeah.
I've seen it on Reddit. Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew about
Yeah.
that
So
one.
really interesting. Yeah. So people can tune in and listen to his thoughts. It was a really interesting conversation. So we'll see where people shake out on it. But yeah, there's something interesting about all game devs in just about every way, not just marketing, but also development. Is just there's so many correct ways to success. Like it's not one individual linear path. Like there are other ways out there. There are obviously maybe best practices and things like that. But yeah, it's interesting to hear different people have success with different routes. Okay, where to go next? I think I'd like to kind of close up here with a final segment here on just sort of game dev advice and kind of looking to the future. So you've been making games for quite a while, but I know you also started by making a bunch of small games like game jams and things like that, releasing to itch.io. Um, so where did the shift happen from making those small games to actually making a commercial game? How did you actually make that jump?
I never, I never treated my itch like it was something of like game jammy. Like I take part in maybe one game jam a year, if that, and it was purely just somewhere where I threw anything that I'd made onto. But I don't really pay much attention to my itch all that often. For me, the jump never really disappeared, and this goes back into my history a bit. I have been making a living doing full-time freelancing as a game developer since 2019. I've been able to build and complete projects for mobile, for VR. I've never done one for Steam for a client, but I've worked on over 100 projects easily over this time span. I've made enough to survive doing this by just working for other people. So it's never like I haven't made a full project before from beginning to end. It's more, this is the first time where I've taken a shot on myself. That's the major change here is I needed a life change, and this is my way out. And if it didn't work, then it didn't work. But fortunately it did.
Yeah, and then for you, did you decide to make that jump and then you came up with All Hail the Orb, or did you have any sort of like prototyping phase and then landed on the game and then made the jump?
So essentially that's what last year was. When I left my company in January, I got literally the day after I was told I was leaving, I got a team together and I started working on a game idea for 2 months, which I'd be more than happy to show you in DMs. But it's called Architect of Evil, and it was a mixture between dungeon like I think it's like Dungeons 3, Evil Genius, and Slay the Spire. And it was something I worked on for about 2 months, practically by myself because the other team members didn't really do much. But I did that, and then I realized I didn't have the money anymore. So all the money I had left over from the company all dried up. So I went back to freelancing. Then you'll see on my Steam page there's a game called Crit and Roll, which I started in June. I did a month of that. Oh, I started in July, did a month of that. Then got bored and then started getting into cursor and AI vibe programming for app development just to kind of like see what's out there, see what I'm interested in still, see if that's an avenue I could go down. I built an app, decided to scrap it because I didn't like the idea that I didn't understand the code in React. Then did freelancing until December, in which, I started streaming in September because not Risk of Rain, Slay the Spire 2 came out, I believe, in September, and that was the most unproductive work month I've ever had in my entire career, ever. And it took all my time away, and I've realized that I needed, because I'm like 99% sure I've got ADHD. It's all the signs are there, and I needed something to put my mind in a position where I could hold myself accountable. So Twitch streaming was that. Twitch streaming was my way for people. So I'm not ever at the thought like, people are watching me playing games when they're meant to be watching me program, that sort of mentality. And it was at that point where, I had no idea I was gonna be working at Hell the Orb until April. I had no
Yeah,
idea.
one thing I'm hearing is that you had a couple of projects that you moved on from. What what were the criteria, or how did you decide to not get held up in those projects, but then all the Hail the Orb did stick?
Validation. All of it comes down to validation. When I did Architect of Evil, it was a really solid game idea, but it was too big for me to cope by myself. And I tried doing a pitch deck, and I had some publishers that are genuinely interested in the game, but they're like, come back to me in 6 months. I didn't have the money to make that 6 months happen, so I scrapped it. The Crit and Roll, I did that, but then I got, once again, I saw a butterfly called AI and I reached for it. That's what stopped Crit and Roll. And then once I dropped it at the end of August, it was literally a 1 month fling uh, with Cursor. So I got back into Crit and Roll. I finished it, and then I looked at it and just went, "This is not what I want my first game to be. I'm better than this. I know I can do better than this. I hold myself to high standards." And then yeah, I just started. I prototyped a animal racing around a track game as an incremental, but then people were looking at it going, it looks all right, but it's not fun. It's like, okay, so I scrapped that, and then I saw the cultist asset, and I just started there. It wasn't until January, like 22nd, where I got proper validation on the idea.
Okay, all right. Two more questions, and then we can call it a night. If there's someone that's watching, and maybe they've got a nice game jam game or a nice hobby project that they feel like they're getting some of that validation from, do you have any advice for moving towards a commercial release and helping that be successful?
Yes, but these pieces of advice have nothing to do with your game or the genre you're going for. My number one thing, do not show your games to your friends you've grown up with. They are useless. They will always be useless. They are not interested in what you do. You weren't friends with them before you started development. Don't bother. It's not worth your time. Get yourself involved with other friend groups that keep your old friends, but get yourself dev friends. Get yourself friends in the space that help push you up and elevate you, rather than look at what you're doing and go, that's probably not going to go anywhere. I guess that looks all right, with no actual contextual understanding of why they think it's all right. That is not useful information from anyone. Um, the second one is playtest. Get people to playtest. There are ways and servers that you can go on to get the average person to playtest. They do exist. It takes time to find. It's a pain to deal with, but it is worth the validation check to see if people are actually going to play it. Those are like my two major ones. The first one I have massive gripes with. Massive gripes with.
Yeah, I love that advice. It's so practical. And I'll go ahead and give a little shameless plug. If you don't know where to find those dev friends, you can join my Discord. There's a lot of developers in there. And a lot of people are just in there looking to connect with other people making games is like a main reason. So feel free to jump in, free to join.
Well, I guess
Um,
if you're shamelessly plugging, come join mine as well.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um, what kind of stuff do you guys do in your Discord? Is it like a dev space, or is it more around
Yes.
like you as a creator?
It's more me as a creator, but we specifically like pushing people forwards that actually post stuff in the show and tell, and we do comment on these things. I'm very proactive in starting conversations with people that develop. Yesterday I raided into a stream of someone who was just doing pixel art, and about 2 hours later I was in a voice chat with them. I'm
That's
one of those
awesome.
people that very much appreciates people's skill sets and talking to them about it. I probably in the last like week have spoken to about 20 different developers just because I like talking to people. I have so much advice, and experience that most people will never have. And it's like, you know, the idea of like you should talk to your elders because they've lived a longer life than you. I'm very much an advocate for that. I love talking to old people. They are my favorite people to talk to for that specific reason. It's just a lot to learn.
Yeah, someone who was like partially raised in my earliest years by my grandparents. Do condone talking to the old folks. They're the best. I'll revise my offer. Jump in Jordan's Discord. He's got actual experience. So get over there. It sounds like a great spot to be. Jordan, let me end you with this final question. So this is the Dev Dream podcast, created mostly to inspire myself, but also others. And I'm always inspired by hearing about the dreams and aspirations of other devs. So I'm curious for you, Jordan, what would you say is your game dev dream in this season of life?
In this season of life, I would probably say off the top of my head, I want to have a company that can just survive as a group of friends. That is what I want. I have had a company which I loathed and hated for 4 years that I co-founded with two people that were meant to be people that I was going to build a game studio with that ended up in shambles due to their greed. I do not want that. Instead, I have proven that things are doable without the need of other people, like as a huge company situation. And I've built something with the people that I want to continue building with. And that already is essentially what I want, just on a small scale. Right now, I want to make my next game. I'm founding my next company by myself, with me as the only sole proprietor of it, of my own company. I should probably not say sole proprietor. That's an actual terminology phrase. But yeah, I'm opening up a new company called Bag of Ducks. It is just me as the co-founder with subcontractors as my friends, and we're gonna make games, and hopefully that goes well.
Well, Jordan, that's a fantastic dream. I hope you're able to make it a reality. Thanks for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you for having me.